That UN, they're a great bunch, aren't they? Iran in the chair on a couple of key committees.
Well, hold on. Isn't the United Nations, Chris, meant to be all about, standing up for the downtrodden, standing up for the oppressed, ensuring that we put in place better rules, etc., for them? Is this an absolute joke? Iran, as you said, are currently slaughtering their own people for standing up and begging for the freedoms that we have on a daily basis. I actually hope that Australia also endorsed what the USA said, disassociated ourselves from this vote, because it is a total joke and, quite frankly, undermines what the UN is meant to be doing.
Spot on. Australia's not immune from this, though, because we learned today that this country has given permanent residency to the daughter of a sanctioned Iranian military leader. Who took that decision? Was it the wrong decision, and can it be rescinded?
They are all the questions which the government should be answering. So we have on one hand, and we'll talk about that shortly, let's bring back in a whole lot of women and their kids who left Australia, turned their backs on us and everything we stand for, to go and actually live with terrorists. And then we wake up this morning to go, well, hey, hold on. Australia has listed the IRGC as a terrorist organisation. We have sanctioned this particular individual. Iran is currently slaughtering its own people who are out there begging for the freedoms that we have on a daily basis. But hey, this is a government who then gives permanent residency to the daughter of this sanctioned individual. This is not a normal routine immigration case, Chris. This is a national security case. You're either serious about sanctions or you're not. You're either serious about listing the IRGC as a terrorist organisation or you're not, and this government is clearly not serious.
Well, it is mind-boggling, as you say, from a national security point of view, because we know that there are Iranians in this country, Australian Iranians, who are living in fear of the outreach of this regime, which has been known to kill and persecute people in other countries, and yet they're letting into this country someone closely connected to the very worst elements of the regime.
Well, what is worse than that? What an insult to every Australian, but to every Jewish Australian, because if you recall, the IRGC were also found to be responsible for an act of terrorism on Australian soil. So again, those questions that you posed in your introduction are exactly the questions that this government should be answering. But more than that, I read a lot of the comments underneath the story. This is what I found interesting. The comments went to this effect: well, I've known someone from the US or from England who've been here for 10 years and they can't get permanent residency. Yep. So I have to say, I mean, Jesus, who is this government actually bringing into this country, and who are they stopping from coming into this country? This is a government that is not standing up for Australia and Australian values, and they should be made, Chris, to basically explain to Australians how this decision was made.
Well, that brings us to the so-called ISIS brides. Now, we know that the government has to be proactive in allowing these returns to happen, because travel documents need to be issued. There has to be passports issues, visas issues. You don't just turn up. You can't get on a plane to Australia unless you've actually had all this documentation handled. Now, two questions here, really. I mean, the government's pretending this is all basically happening without it even knowing what's going on. That's ridiculous. The minister oversees this. And secondly, under law, do they have the right to actually refuse passports to these people?
OK, so in the first instance, you now have Australia, a Prime Minister who is blatantly lying to your face. Identity checks, DNA checks, passports being issued, documents for travel being prepared. I'm going to do something really unparliamentary, and I'm going to call bullshit on this Prime Minister. You are lying to the Australian people. You are assisting these women and their children who turned their back on Australia to come back here. Do not treat Australians as mugs. But, Chris, this is actually the bigger deception. It's in relation to the temporary exclusion orders. The minister keeps on saying, I haven't got the national security advice. What the minister is forgetting to tell the Australian people is that under Section 10 of the relevant Act, the minister does not need the advice of the security agencies. The minister can form his own reasonable suspicion that keeping these women out of our country would assist in ensuring that there is not a terrorist-related event on Australian soil. So the minister is hiding behind our security agencies when he himself could form a reasonable suspicion. Now, let me give you the facts, though, because the minister will say, Michaelia's wrong. I need the security agencies to actually give me that reasonable suspicion. Wrong. These women left Australia to go to an ISIS-controlled territory. These women lived in an ISIS-controlled territory whilst the terrorists committed acts of genocide and global terrorist events. These women either married or associated with ISIS fighters. These women have spent the last 6 years in camps specifically for ISIS families. Worse, they've chosen to come back to Australia, but a few months after the most significant terrorist-related event this country has ever seen. Now, I don't know about you, Chris, but if Minister Burke cannot form a reasonable suspicion on those publicly available facts, then I just don't know what you actually need. He could issue temporary exclusion orders this afternoon against every single one of these individuals. And as Angus Taylor has so articulately said, shut the door.
It is a deep worry, and that argument was brilliantly articulated there, Michaelia Cash. I appreciate it. Thanks very much.